The Eumenes Project is an amateur speculative zoology project exploring the fictional planet of Eumenes in the Korea system. The project consists of a snapshot of the diversity of life at one moment of the planet's biological history. Most significantly, Eumenes is characterized by high tectonic activity and accordingly high variations in altitude. A relatively thin atmosphere and cool temperatures at high altitudes mean that peaks and plateaus rear like islands over vast seas of mists. Life forms among these so-called islands above the clouds are heavily speciated due to nearly isolated evolutionary paths, so any survey of life on Eumenes must be incomplete. Still, even this snapshot indicates a vibrant world of stunning diversity. In Part 1, we will discuss the species that thrive on the highest elevations above the mist. The high-altitude biomes on Eumenes consist generally of three sorts: rocky, barren slopes, sparse forests of symbiotic flora, or treeless, windswept plateaus. The forests that cover most of these habitats are in fact symbiotic colonies. A massive, tree-like plant provides structure against the wind and height against foragers, as well as drawing nutrients from the soil. Meanwhile, a flowing weed-like organism roots along the tree-like branches in a manner analogous to Spanish moss on Earth. This symbiote photosynthesizes while also attracting pollinators. The two species exchange nutrients through a complex chemical interplay. As on Earth, some plants have evolved animal-based reproduction strategies through growing fruit to encourage seed dispersal. There are multiple kinds of fruit trees on Eumenes, but one bears careful attention. It has uniquely developed highly poisonous false fruits to attract and kill foraging animals. These creatures then die and decompose in heaps, enriching the soil. Thus, Eumenes hosts a species of fruit tree, which is best described as carnivorous. Over the fields and beneath the thin canopies of Eumenes forests, thick and varied grasses serve as ground cover. But through this vegetal carpet slither furtive creatures, which we will call crawlers, moving on dozens of short legs on long, flat bodies, and omnivorously eating sweet grasses and insects. Crawlers rely on camouflage to evade predators while grazing. However, crawlers' camouflage is not enough to protect them from one form of stationary predator, which we will call lurkers. These blind hunters burrow underground and spread sensitive tentacles around. When they detect vibrations, they can pinpoint and strike their prey with astonishing speed. Related to the lurker is what we will call the leaper, a parasitic creature whose tentacles have evolved into powerful springing tools. Climbing above their targets, leapers can launch themselves long distances, burying their teeth into the prey. Technically parasites, leapers can overwhelm and devour smaller creatures, making them a real menace to anything in the forest. Meanwhile, a smaller relative has adopted to a more restrained and typical parasitic role, which we will call flying ticks. These creatures have evolved flight and less overt predation, draining a slow flow of blood from their temporary hosts over long periods. Evolving in relatively peaceful isolation on distant plateaus, one species has evolved a unique form of locomotion. Called hoppers, these creatures have evolved bizarre, telescoping bone structures that contract and extend to propel themselves in bounds over the plains. With few predators, these peaceful grazers roam in massive herds. But even hoppers are not safe on Eumenes. One distantly related species, which we will call stompers, have a similar body structure, but live as solitary predators. These great beasts have evolved sharp claws to cut up prey and eat through their downward-facing mouths. But even the terrifying stomper can know a master. The last species in Part 1 is the most exceptional, a relative latecomer to evolution on Eumenes. The creatures we will call crustaceans are the most intelligent life forms on the planet. Sharing a common ancestor with hoppers and stompers, they have reached a state of social organization, technological sophistication, and language comparable to the Stone Age on Earth. From the use of natural materials for construction, to fire for signaling, to domestication for labor, to weapons for warfare, crustaceans are well on the way to becoming the dominant species on much of Eumenes. In Part 2, we will discuss the increasingly strange and remarkable creatures that inhabit the lower elevations, shrouded in mist, and the legends of the crustacean civilization.